Thanks, guys. We'll get started. Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. We've got people here from all over Australia, as well as some people from our cousins over in New Zealand. So, welcome, Kiwis, to Insistex Australasia and our webinar for the month of May on sustainable future and rodent control. I'm going to be going through a few different aspects of rodent control, and probably some of you are going to have questions or maybe even disagree, which is fine and good. It's good for good to have opinions. And if you do, I think there should be an avenue for you to be able to text in the side panel somewhere some questions, and then I have someone set up here just to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, so like I said, welcome and thanks for turning up. We know it's been a long, hard day in pest control. I know what it's like. I've been doing this for 40 years. And so I know what it's like. I know that the last thing you want to be doing is sitting here listening to me, but I'll try and make it interesting. Okay, so in regards to pest control, and I've seen this because I've been in the industry for 40 years, things are changing and changing quite rapidly. In the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of changes in the way that not just we treat pests, but also in the way that we are required to treat our clients as well, and the way that we carry out our roles or our responsibilities in the industry and the impact that that can have and often does have on the environment. So the changes that we've made in the industry are to try and minimize those risks that we inherently carry out using chemicals and toxic products and whatnot. Um, and I think for the most part, the changes have been very, very good. They've made us more professional. So I'm a fan of it. The two main management issues when we look at rodent control is toxicity to non-target species like our friendly owl here, whether it be owls or any predatory bird or foxes or whatnot. There is a risk for primary ingestion of the rodenticide. So the actual non-target species manages to get hold of some of your rodenticide that you've carefully placed around the block, and he obviously will die from that. This was a bigger issue probably back in the 80s when I first started in pest control, because we had no idea what a lockable tamper-proof rodent station was. But now we're able to contain our rodenticides inside these, and there's a variety of different stations available. So primary access to the bait should never happen. What can happen is secondary poisoning. Secondary poisoning is where a non-target species manages to get hold of one or more rodents that have fed on particularly a second generation anticoagulant. And if he eats enough of it, secondary poisoning is possible. And if you've been in the industry as long as many of the people that I know on here, we've all had that call from a client saying, "You're at my house 2 weeks ago, you put some rotobaits around, and now my dog is sick. Here's the vet bill." So none of us want that to happen. Part of what we're going to be doing this evening is looking at ways of minimizing that. We can't ever take it completely away because we need rodenticides to keep rodents under control, but it's just how we use them. Of course, the second issue is resistance, particularly with mice who build up resistance very quickly, and that's why many of you change the baits that you use on a fairly regular basis. And of course, the next one is rodent welfare. We're going to look a little bit at rodent welfare because that's become more of an issue in the brave new world that we live in. And the clientele that we have, people want us to have a moral compass which is in line with their expectations on how we carry out our roles. We're paid to kill, that's what we are. How we do it is up to us, and we're going to be looking at some more humane ways of controlling rodents. There is other aspects of management issues with rodents too. One, of course, is client expectations, but that's a subject all on its own, and we haven't got time to go into that tonight. It's a big subject, though. So in the EU, the European Union, They use anticoagulants as well. They're typically used at 0.05 grams per kilogram. If you look on the label of whatever rodenticide you're using, if it's a second generation, it's most likely going to be at zero point 0.5. That's 50 parts per million of rodenticide. In the EU, they're looking at dropping that down to nearly half at 30 parts per million for consumer use only. So that means that the bait is, or some of the issues that arise from that, of course, are that it's significantly less effective. Rodents need to eat more. If they eat more, they build up resistance quicker, and because it takes longer to kill. So that's one of the issues with dropping down the active. In the good old US of A, the EPA under the Federal Insecticide and Fungicide and Rodenticide Act. One of their or several of their risk mitigation decisions are that rodenticides are marketed to consumers to be sold in tamper-proof bait stations only. I think this is a great idea, mainly because you walk into any Bunnings in Australia, and what do we see on the shelf on the pest control aisle is a variety of rodenticides sold in a variety of different packaging. Most of it you can just buy loose. You can buy a 3 kilo, you can buy a 10 kilo bucket of rodenticide, exactly what you've got on your truck. And do you think that they're using that inside tamper-proof rodent stations? I would seriously doubt that. Do you think that they're being careful in where they put it? Probably not. So that's one of the issues that the USA is addressing. I think it's a really good idea. So it prohibits sales of loose bait to consumers. Fantastic. In Australia, APVMA has been doing some work on this. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that later. But they're looking at obviously a second generation anticoagulants, um, risk to non-target animals, risk to humans, pets, and wildlife. Many of you know that there's a lot of human exposure incidents annually. When this was written, which was a couple of years ago, 1,400. Looking at labeling issues to stop use in crops, looking at use of liquid formulations, and of course, one of the quotes that comes out of that is anticoagulant rodenticide exposure in Australian predatory bird increases with proximity to developed habitat, which makes perfect sense. We're moving into their environment, we're building new estates all over Sydney, and I'm sure it's the same in wherever you are. And of course, we move into their environment, it affects the animals and bird life in those areas. All rodenticides are toxic, whether it be a second generation or a first generation anticoagulant. Obviously, many of you guys are using either something like brodifacoum, difenicum, bromadiolone, probably the typical second generations, and first generation, something like warfarin, which again is available on Bunnings shelf. You see it there. Cholecalciferol is another popular one as well as a first generation. For those who don't know, the difference between a first generation and a second generation anticoagulant in a sentence is that first generations are less toxic, um, so they take longer to kill. Back when I started, a first generation was really what was called a multi-feed rodenticide. The rodent had to feed on the bait multiple times over several days in order to get a lethal dose. But with a second generation anticoagulant, it's possible and yeah, generally accepted. It's a single feed rodenticide. So because all poisons are toxic, all rodenticides are toxic, it's placement, placement, placement. We have to be extremely careful where we're putting these tamper-proof rodent stations. Um, so we're doing what we normally do, whether you're on a termite inspection or wherever you're on a cockroach treatment, we're carrying out an inspection. We're putting together a rodent management plan. Um, and most of us are already implementing that sort of thing. The tamper-proof rodent stations are just that, they're tamper-proof. If you've been around long enough, you'll see that if a Doberman or a Rottweiler is determined enough, he will get into it and he will break it open, he'll chew it to pieces. So we've got to be extremely careful where we're putting these stations, and they need to be fixed in place as well. There's a whole lot of rules and regulations for us. We need to be working alongside the legislation with rodent control, as well as the APVMA's recommendations as well. But the rodents have no such rules. All they're after is a decent feed and a warm place to sleep. That's all they care about. So, like I hinted at before, the APMA's Code as Best Practice for Rodent Management is available. If you haven't got one, your AMP, sorry, AMPMA's branch in your state, you can contact them and they will probably, I should be able to get you a copy of that. They have a section in here. It's a good read, actually. It's very interesting and it's got a lot of really good suggestions in there. One of the things I pulled out of here was what they call the risk hierarchy. Now, the risk hierarchy is basically implementing an effective control measures starting with the lowest risk element first. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, I just pulled a couple of brief things out of that. Um, When looking at a rodent management plan, let's look at proofing, removal of food and water, removal of harborage first, those things. And that's really just changing the environment. Then looking at trapping, which has minimal impact on the environment. And of course, lastly, rodenticides. Um, I know what this is like. I know the pressure that you guys are under when it comes to carrying out a rodent management plan. The client just wants you to get rid of the rats and get rid of them now. They want you to come in there and throw around some toxic rodenticide, and that's part of the battle that we have is educating our clients. Of course, typical daily rat activity, they're nocturnal mostly. When there's heavy infestations, they're active all day round. So looking at proofing, this is typically what you'll find. So you do an inspection, it's not hard to see that rodents are gaining activity, chew straight through the wood. And if you do carry out an effective, and that's pretty good proofing there, those metal strips across the bottom of the door, the rats just jump up on the hinge and gain access anyway. So when carrying out a proofing program, we've got to look up as well. Rats are extremely good climbers and they have no hassles at all in getting into this building. So we're proofing the wiring, we're proofing the plumbing, we're even proofing the dodgy brickwork. So looking at the real world, this was a site a little while ago. It's a warehouse where they are warehousing food, like dry food, and looking at just keeping in mind the risk hierarchy, what we looked at before, and what we're going to do, what we're going to implement on this site in order to get control of the rodent activity. So mice here are sighted 4 to 5 times a day by the staff. The staff say the rodents were present for about 15 years, possibly longer, and there's daily stock damage. This is something that you guys see every second day. Of course, on your inspection, you're seeing things like this fairly regularly. And as part of your management plan, you're putting in a report to the management and hoping that they listen to you when you say that you need to clean the stock up, you need to clean spills up immediately, you need to store things in, better containers so that these sort of spillages don't happen. So habitat modification is what was needed here. Took an external team 9 weeks to carry that out with a lot of recommendations. Habitat modification. So just doing one simple thing like clearing the vegetation away from the external wall is going to solve a lot of problems. Rodents love to access a building through thick vegetation like this. It gives them great cover from predatory birds and whatever else. So I was in Indonesia just a few weeks ago, and we walked around a large commercial site just trying to assess what the problem was. And there was a lot of rodent activity there over a number of years. The pest control company was rodent baiting there consistently. Every 2 weeks, they were there just filling up bait stations. And one of the issues that we picked up straight away was the fact that there was a lot of vegetation up against the back wall of this. It was a really big factory, And just a quick conversation, we worked out where was most of the rodent activity. It was in all the stations along the back wall on the inside. So obviously that's an access point. So part of the habitat modification there was to do exactly what's happened here. It's just to clear all that vegetation away. Convert the pallets to shelter. And once we've finished our habitat modification, we're moving into a trapping phase. So we put in some snap traps here. And as you can see, we're going to get a hit straight away. On the bottom right-hand side, you can see there. So what happens after that? After we finished all of our we think we've got pretty good control of the rodents. We're not getting much activity, barely or any, if any, bait's been eaten. We go back into a monitoring phase, and the majority of people, and no one here would do this, but the majority of pest controllers out there would typically visit there every 2 weeks, maybe every 4 weeks, and they would just check rodent stations. If the bait's moldy or been half chewed, they'll put it into a bag. They'll replace it with a whole lot of more toxic rodenticides, put it in there. Um, Once they finish the job, what do they do with all that leftover old bait? Chuck it in the client's bin. If they're good, they'll take it back to their own office and chuck it in their own bin. And where's that end up? In landfill. And what happens at landfill? Predatory birds, foxes, and whatever else is going to eat that bait. So we want to look at ways of minimizing that happening. And so I want to talk a little bit about monitoring and how best to monitor. And if you haven't already guessed, I'm trying to look at ways of minimizing the use of rodenticides. It'll save using or so much rodenticide going into wastage and into landfill, and it will save you money as well because rodenticides are getting expensive. It costs you money. I know I used to look after the Stegel site where I live, and yeah, it was not unusual to go through 2 or 3 buckets of bait per visit because there was a lot of activity there. And this is some time ago, before we knew what a monitoring block was. So, as many of you know, we carry a range of products. One of them is called the NARA block. It's a non-toxic monitoring block. It's basically it's non-organic, so it's a synthetic block. It's flavored and it's to use as a monitoring block. The beauty of this, there's several advantages with this block. One is that it lasts a heck of a lot longer than an organic monitoring block that you might already be using. Typically, a monitoring block is going to last you a maximum of 3 months. This block should last you, even in a wet environment, at least 12 months. Comes in a couple of different types. There's on the left, there's the block, which goes into a typical rodent station. And on the right-hand side, we've got a little Nara sticks, which go onto a snap trap. And I'll show you how they work in a moment. I'll give you a picture or two of them. They're allergen free. They have no foodstuffs in them whatsoever. So they're not going to attract other things, other pests to them as well. So to show you how attractive they are, I hope you can hear that little bit of lost mouse music in the background. There's a mouse feeding on a Nara block, and in the background we've got some snap traps with peanut butter on them. And over several days, he just kept coming back to, yeah, I'm playing music. Um, he kept coming back to the same blocks. So obviously, when you're checking your stations and using Nara, you see that the block has been chewed. You remove the block, you replace it with some toxic bait, you get control, and then you can put the Nara block straight back in there and reuse it. Like I said, it can last a lot longer than an organic block. So it is a battlefield. We also work alongside the RSPCA. They're saying that, and I agree with them, that rodents are sentient animals capable of suffering pain, fear, and distress. And this is what we used to do some years ago. I do believe that Some people still use glue boards for rodent control. It's not a good look for your clients, and most of us want to be more professional than that. And with the advent of social media, YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and whatnot, it wouldn't be long before something like this happened where your logo was right there and someone posted it on Facebook. It's a brave new world we live in, and yeah, most of us spend a bit of time on Facebook or social media, and we certainly don't want that happening. And even worse would be if it was a non-target animal like that stuck on a glue board with your logo on it. So let's move away from that. Let's not use glue boards for rodent control anymore, and let's get on to something far more professional and far more humane. And that would be, and the last section that I showed you in the APVMA's, oh sorry, the AMP, yeah, AEPMA's code of practice for rodent control is snap traps or trapping. This is a trap we used to sell it in Systex some time ago. It's really handy because you can release the trap and set the trap easily by just pressing down on the black handle at the back, and you don't even have to touch the rodent when you're releasing it. Just grab it, pick it up, squeeze it, drop it into a bin or a bag or whatever, and you don't have to touch the rat. But the problem with these are, and we don't sell them anymore for a reason, and that is that they're not particularly humane. They do have a double spring, so they're really strong, but what happens is the mouth on them doesn't open wide enough. So the impact on the rat is not strong enough, and these things are tested, and this one failed the test. Now I know this trap is really popular in Australia, but there are better options, and we think we've come up with a better option on another trap I'll show you later. But we used to sell this, and we don't anymore for that reason. Just want to give you a look at a couple of the different traps available on the market. You can buy these sorts of things from Bunnings. Um, I don't know if there's any legislation on anyone being able to make a rat trap. If there is, it's not enforced because there's just all the weakest and dodgiest ones out there. Mice in particular are really good at removing, particularly peanut butter. If you use that on a snap trap, they're really good at removing that without setting traps off. Um, but the beauty of the Nara block is he can't remove it, or the Nara stick rubber, he can't remove it from where he's got to chew it off the plate. So you can see here, this is a double spring trap. Um, Sorry for those of you who are eating dinner, but this will be over in a minute. And even a double spring trap, if it's just not powerful enough or there's not enough opening on it, the rat eventually can escape. Okay. So we've started using these. They're called a gorilla. We've got them in mouse or rat size. The reason we use them is because we tested them and they were tested by other professionals as well, to work out whether they were humane or not. Humaneness is rated on how quickly the animal is rendered unconscious, and it's irreversibly unconscious. So this is the best one that we could find. And you can see there too how the Nara sticks sit or just clip onto just on the plate there. That means the rodent can't remove it, so it has to chew it from there. So there's a far better chance you're going to catch the rat or mouse first time. So like I said, independently tested, approved by a lot of different people. It exceeds welfare category A of the Australian Code of Practice. So that was a major reason we decided to go with this trap. So how did we test it? Many of you have probably heard of the banana challenge or the banana test. And it seems like a pretty simple test, but it's a reasonably fair test, I think. Um, People said to me, well, how do you know both banana, has one banana raw and one banana is old? No, you can see they're both exactly the same or as close as we could get them. So is that a humane kill? Questionable. So this is a gorilla trap, and we've got significantly better result there. Now, we are testing this against another very similar trap, which is quite a competitor, and there's quite a difference in the damage to the banana, as you can see. So that's why it's considered humane. And almost lastly, I'm nearly done, but I just wanted to have a quick look at this as well. Many of you have seen this, and we've showed this to many of you before. It's Rodent Digital or Rodent Digital. So this is something that we've been rolling out for about the last 12 months or so, and I've just finished doing a big install of this over in Indonesia on that site I mentioned earlier. So it's permanent, it's intelligent, it's remote, so you don't have to be on site for this to send you notifications. Um, and so it's an excellent system, and I highly recommend it. Industry is moving away from manual checking to automatic notifications, non-toxic monitoring, only using rodenticides where we know we have activity, and more efficient inspections. Some of the things that this program can do, or this system can do, it comes with its own program as well, and in it you were able to generate a variety of different reports. One of my favorites is the heat map. The heat map is generated by how many times the sensor goes off. So if a sensor goes off several times, we get color changes on this map. And you can set it up however you want. In this case, green and blue means we're not getting any activity in those areas. Yellow means a moderate amount of activity, and red means a high amount of activity. So you can print this off and include it as part of your report and send it off to your client. And trust me, food industry particularly is going to love these sort of reports from you. They look really professional and they're very telling. So if this is a site that I'm looking after, I know where I need to be only putting monitoring blocks and no rodenticides, and I know which areas I need to put rodenticides in until I get control. That's one of the things that this will tell you. So terrific idea. How does the system work? On the top left there, you'll see the sensor called a GT sensor. So it monitors and detects rodent activity. It has a motion detector in it and a vibration detector in it in the one device. Once it is triggered, it sends a notification off to you. You document that. You can then action that activation of that device based on what it tells you. Okay. The sensor is very versatile. It's only very small and it can fit inside just about any rodent station. You can see there's a variety of mounting options for it. Um, or you don't even need to mount it at all. It can just be a standalone as well. You can see here, this is one of our stations and we've mounted it just inside the station. So you close the lid on that and it's nicely tucked away. The rodent has to go underneath, so it comes in from the side, has to go under the sensor in order to get to either a monitoring block or rodenticide on the bar there. And when it does that, you're going to get a notification and you're going to get it immediately. Usually within about a minute to 2 minutes, you'll get a notification that you've had activity at that site. Okay. If the motion sensor goes off, it means it just walked past it. If the vibration sensor goes off, it's typically because you've got a snap trap in here and the snap trap's gone off as well. So you'll get both. So benefits of it are early warning. Early warning means you can react to it very, very quickly, less complaints from your clients. We're reducing the use of rodenticides. So if you've got that station that I just showed you before, with the GT sensor there and just some narrow monitoring blocks on that bar, you're not using any rodenticides. You're and rather than having to come out and check and see whether the narrow block has been chewed, you're going to get a notification to say, "Hey, we've got activity here." So it's a great idea. Dramatically reduces labor costs, able to monitor difficult to reach and high security areas. And of course, we've got some intelligent reporting as well. Simple things like spreadsheets it can do, documenting time, date, um, and what happened at the site as well. And for those sites that you need to provide reports for auditing, again, they're going to love this sort of thing. And lastly, wanted to touch on Rodenethor gel. Many of you are using this product anyway, but it's something we come up with a couple of years ago. It's a full strength, so 0.05 grams per kilogram brodifacoum. It's a nice bright blue color. It basically fits straight into your caulking gun, 300 grams, and it comes out just like silicon. What's the advantage of that? It's a different consistency for those really difficult sites where you can't get feeding. You know what it's like. You typically turn up to, say, a food warehouse, like we looked at before, and there's lots of grain. So you're looking for a different consistency of bait in order to get control, because your block bait's not working. So you'll use a soft bait, maybe a pasta base, and this gives you another option with a really attractive gel type. Like I said, it's like a silicon. Um, Sorry, just someone's entering now as we're finishing up. Um, And one of the other real advantages of this product is if you can imagine you're putting a block bait inside a rodent station and a rodent's going in there and chewing that rodenticide, and you've all seen that lots of little crumbs fall out. And sometimes those little crumbs and bits of debris from the block bait end up outside the station. That cannot happen with Rodenethor gel. It stays exactly where you put it. It doesn't run. It retains its shape, and there's much less risk of it getting into the environment. We call it lipogel technology, so it's basically just blending food ingredients with some nice aromatics in a gel bait, which retains its long-term stability, attraction, retention of moisture, and palatability. We use this in a site in over where you live, Clint, in New Zealand, some time ago. You probably remember this. And I think it was a bit of a problem site where there was a high amount of rodent infestation. We had an 85% reduction in 3 weeks. And in a further 2 weeks, we'd solved the problem pretty much. I mean, you can never tell you've killed every rodent, but we were able to claim 100% success in 5 weeks using just this product. So it's extremely attractive, extremely palatable. It is the best gel bait I've ever used. And anyone that uses it says the same thing. Okay, so finishing up, what's the future going to look like? Hopefully not like that. Okay, so I am finished. I really appreciate your time. And if you have any questions regarding anything I've said or any of the products that we've looked at, please contact your local Insistex rep. If you want to ask a question, you want to take it off mute, I'm happy for you to do that if you like.
I'm new to this, but like, are clients going to be willing to pay for trapping where you'd need to come back more frequently? Like, is
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
it like that's one of the stumbling blocks that I can kind of see straight away? Is that
yeah.
a reality or am I wrong?
No, no, it's definitely a reality, Jason, and it's part of the challenge we're facing now in this industry, is that we are moving in a direction, and it's not just Australia, it's the whole world. That's why I pointed out some things in the US and the EU in what they're coming up against as well. We're doing the same thing. And it's not just in Systex, it's a lot of the manufacturers are heading in the same direction so far as trying to reduce the amount of rodenticides. And I mentioned that before. Your client's just saying to you, "Hey, I've got rats on my roof. I want them sorted. I want them sorted now." And the temptation is just to go out there and throw some rodent baits around. And certainly, I'm not saying not to do that. I'm saying put a management plan in place. So for many domestic places, that's what you'll have to do, and you just have to do it in a safer way as you possibly can. Um,
I noticed you didn't mention Muskill. Is that is there a reason?
Yeah, because I didn't want to come across like I was just trying to push all my products all the time. I'm trying to be really objective. I really love Muskill actually. Being a dual active, it actually does have a better safety profile.
Yeah, and I love saying that to my clients. It's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you brought it up, so I'm saying it, okay? Um, but yeah, certainly with your commercial contracts, they're probably you're going to find that they're got more of a listening ear when it comes to more sustainable practices with rodent control than your
Yeah.
domestic who just wants a quick solution now. So look after them, like I said, in the safest way as you can. Use the safest bait that you can, the most effective. Um, and make sure, even with a domestic property, you still got to carry out like a management plan. Um, and keep in mind some of the things. If you get a chance, read the AMS paper on it. It's really good. So thanks very much for your time, everyone. Like I said, just feel free to reach out to your Insistex area manager and ask any questions about anything that we've talked about tonight. Thanks for your time, and I'll finish it there. Cheers.